Day is a patriotic holiday in the United States. This ceremony is held every year on November 11th. This day is used because World War I ended at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month.
It was originally called Armistice Day, but was changed to Veterans Day to honor those who served in all wars.
It has been said that a veteran is someone who, at one point in his or her life, wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount of up to and including my life. This is honor, and we must not forget it. We must not forget those who sacrificed all and the reason they made that sacrifice.
The annual celebration to honor those who died, as well as our nation's 25 million living veteran, should not be limited to one day each year. Their service should be remembered and honored in thoughts, words, and deeds throughout the year.
There are many ways that you can honor veterans and celebrate a day like today. With this in mind, we do this program each year, so we are all reminded of the service and sacrifices they've made for our freedom.
Please stand for the presentation of our flag and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Color Guard, attention. Color Guard, forward march. Color Guard, halt. Color Guard, present the colors. Please arise if able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the cloud of their skies o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets were black, the bombs bursting in air. They flew through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. The Armed Forces of the United States are made up of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard.
St. Luke's is proud to honor all veterans, and especially those that have touched our families and our school in different ways. Let's find out some more about a few of these veterans that represent the different branches of the armed forces.
First up is a Marine. This is appropriate as the Marines have been the first to fight in almost every major war. These soldiers of the sea, as they are also called, are specially trained for service on the sea, land, and air.
The motto of the Marine Corps is Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. We are so lucky to hear from our former upper school director, Tim Anderson, on his experience in the Marines. He is interviewed by Jack Wheeler.
I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Tim Anderson, former upper school director at St. Luke's School. He is also the husband of Mrs. Angela Anderson, one of our current faculty members. Mr. Anderson, thank you for being a part of our Veterans Day program. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you. Why did you go into the military?
Jack, I went in the military because when I got out of college, my friends from high school who had joined out of high school, joined the Army or the Marine Corps, were getting back. And I felt like I had skated through college while these guys were in a combat zone, and I just felt like I had an obligation to my country.
So you enlisted, sir?
I did.
What do you remember most about the day that you enlisted?
That it was bitter cold, that I was completely unprepared for what happened, in that I had to get a medical waiver because of an injury. And the recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we got your waiver, come on down." And I thought I was going down there to talk about possibilities. And they ushered me through the door and they said, "Just step right through that door." I went in there and there was a cold-eyed captain sitting there and he said, "Put your heels together, boy." And he administered the oath and I was in. And it wasn't a lot of heavy thought, it was just following orders.
All right, so since you enlisted, what was the main reason that you joined?
Just felt like I had an obligation to my country.
How did you choose your branch of service?
Well, I was dating a girl at Mississippi College, and I went out there and I walked through the student union, and Captain Reed Bolick, who was a recruiter for the Marine Corps, had a table set up. And I said, "Man, that uniform looks good." Of course, he had about 3 rows of ribbons. And I got to talking to him, and he thought I was a viable candidate, and so he started the process, and that's how it happened.
What was basic training like?
Well, it was 13 weeks of some very difficult times. There were a lot of times where you really questioned why you were there. Jack, if I could just add one thing. We had a formation at 4:15 in the morning. And so we had the formation, and then we would march to our morning meal. But the railroad had a track that went right through. And we were in Virginia, and you would see guys in a Pullman car having a nice breakfast as we were standing in the rain or standing in the cold and facing another day of training. Really make you wonder, why am I here exactly?
Have you ever been deployed?
Several times.
Where were some of the places that you were stationed, sir?
Well, I was stationed on both coasts. Also went to Europe. Jack, I think it was 5 times.
What was your job in the military?
Well, initially I was trained as an infantry officer, as all Marine Corps officers are. And after about a year of that, I thought, there's gotta be a better way to make a living. And so I asked for it and got a lateral change and became a military policeman, MP as they call it in the military.
What was your fondest memory while in the service, or what was your favorite assignment?
Well, my fondest memory, without question, are the relationships. Richard Carr, Hugh Ingram, Billy McHarden, Tom Wheatley. There just aren't any better people than that, and that's what I really carried from the service. Probably my favorite assignment was the last one I had, which is I was an instructor in Command and General Staff College, which is a school for majors who want to become lieutenant colonels. And they dubbed me as the military history resource. So I got to delve into things that I really love, and then I got to teach them to really eager students. That was a great assignment. That was almost not like work.
So how long did you serve, and what was your rank upon being discharged?
I have 26 years of active and reserve service, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
Find out what it is that you want to do, and then find a military occupational specialty in whatever branch you decide to go that matches that. Don't get a job that's just, we had what we call pickweed jobs. Don't do that, but find out what it is you want to do and go after that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your sacrifices and your service to this country. We greatly appreciate everything that you've done for us.
The Navy fights the enemy at sea, on it, under it, and above it. Their ships also carry food and medical supplies to disaster areas. Many Navy sailors chose this branch because they love the ocean and adventure. They have opportunities to visit many parts of the world. Let's check in on this St. Luke's alum to hear about his adventures in the Navy.
Hello everyone, this is William Rossler, and today we're going to be interviewing Chief Warrant Officer Joel Hulak, a current member of the United States Navy and a former student at St. Luke's Episcopal School. Hey Joel, thanks for joining us today. I just had a couple of questions for you.
Hey William, thanks for the interview. I appreciate you looking out for us active duty military and some of our veterans that are here supporting the nation.
So, why did you go into the military? Were you drafted or enlisted?
Why did I join the military? I wanted to get away from home. I wanted to go travel the world. I wanted to go see everything that I could possibly see. Not much was going on for me when I first joined because I didn't want to go to college, not yet. So I decided I wanted to go on a great big adventure. So I joined the Navy.
What is one thing you remember about the day you enlisted?
So one thing that I remember about the day that I enlisted, my mother was pregnant with my little brother, William, and they took me to the recruiting station, and I got on a bus and went and got on a plane, and we went to Montgomery, Alabama. I spent the night there, and then the following day, we got on another flight. We went to Great Lakes, Illinois, and as soon as I got off the plane, it was so cold that I lost my breath. So that's a huge thing about the day that I joined that I'll never forget.
What were some of the reasons that you joined the military?
So some of the reasons I decided to join, like I said before, I wanted to get out and about and go do things and go on an adventure, but I really didn't know what I was doing in life, and I knew I could get a great education, get some great training, meet some great friends, as well as support and defend the country that we all love, the United States of America.
How did you choose your branch of service?
So the reason I decided to join the Navy, I knew I didn't want to join the Army, and I knew I didn't want to join the Marine Corps because I didn't feel like getting shot at. And because my grandfather was also in the Navy during World War II. So we have history of Navy veterans in my family. And I've seen pictures of him on his old ship, in his uniform, and I just thought it was like one of the best looking uniforms.
What was your basic training like?
So basic training or boot camp at Recruit Training Command, Great Lakes, Illinois, was pretty crazy at times, but I had a lot of fun. I remember I was hungry a lot because we used to exercise a lot, and I remember I wrote home a couple letters to my mother saying, they don't feed us enough. I'm hungry all the time. And they did. They fed us enough. I was just still growing. I was putting on a lot of weight, doing a lot of push-ups and stuff like that. It was extremely cold because I was up there from January 14th to March 21st, and there was snow everywhere. And I had just left Mobile, Alabama, where it was probably only like in the 60s or 50s. So it was a huge culture shock, or, weather change, as well as a culture shock, because now I was in this great big organization learning how to do basic things like wear a uniform and, make my bed the Navy way. And I'm learning this all with all kinds of people from all kinds of places all over the United States, from the Philippines, from Puerto Rico. There was all kinds of people from everywhere. So we did a lot of PT, we did a lot of running, did a lot of training. It was great.
Have you ever been deployed, and what were some of the places you were stationed at?
So yes, I've been deployed. I've been deployed, 4 separate times. As well as I spent 1 year on a global support of anti-terrorism. So I went down to Guantanamo Bay and spent a year as a prison guard for some of the detainees that are down there that were members of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and stuff like that. I've also been deployed to the Middle East, which is considered the 5th Fleet area of operations, and I've been to places like Bahrain, Dubai, as well as traveled all over the Mediterranean, doing operations in that area on board 2 different ships, They were both destroyers, but a little bit different. One was the USS Stout, and the other one was the USS Bulkley. I've been stationed in Virginia Beach and Norfolk for the majority of my career, but I've also been stationed, like I said, down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as well as been stationed Whidbey Island, Washington State, and I just recently came back from Naples, Italy.
What is your job currently in the military?
So initially joined as a sonar technician and went to school in San Diego after I left boot camp. I then advanced through the ranks and became a chief petty officer, and did things like detect, track, localize, and find submarines all over the world. I recently have changed jobs, and I'm no longer enlisted. I'm now an officer. I'm a chief warrant officer 2. So I will still be, my main job will be to continue to find and track submarines, but in a different capacity. I'll have more responsibilities and more sailors under my charge.
What is your fondest memory so far, or favorite assignment?
So my fondest moment or memory since being in the Navy is probably the year that I spent down or overseas in Italy. The reason why is because it's Italy. I was stationed in Europe. I could travel all over Europe. I went so many different places in Italy, as well as the job. I'd love to tell you more about the job, but I really can't because it's top secret, which is kind of cool. But if you want to know more, you'd have to join yourself.
How long have you been serving in the military, and what is your current rank?
So right now I've been in for almost 18 years. In January will be 18 years. And I joined May 14th, 2 days before my brother William was born, like I said.
And what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
So what advice would I give to somebody who's talking about joining? Exercise, 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 as well as read. Get used to reading all the time. If you don't do it now, get used to reading, cracking open a book. Put your phones down, stop playing video games all the time. Learn to read a lot. The reason why I say that is because everything has a rule or regulation that supports it, no matter what you do. From wearing the uniform and how you wear it, to how you do your job, how to work with others, how to be a leader. It's all documented. It's all written in black and white. And a common catchphrase you may hear me say, if you ever join up and you work for me, will be documentation replaces conversation. So if you don't know how to do your job, you better learn and you better get in the books. So get used to reading now. I also talked about exercise. So it's very important for you to maintain good physical conditioning. So that means hitting up the gym, going for a run, make sure you're eating right, not eating a bunch of crap. That's extremely important for your mind, body, and soul. Because if you put time and effort into bettering yourself, you will see yourself continuously progressing through the ranks. You won't be stuck at the low level. You won't be stuck in middle management. You can see yourself, becoming, a chief petty officer or, an officer one day if you stay in. My plan is to stay in for 30 years, and I hope to retire as a chief warrant officer 5. It's great for retirement. I'll go to school while I'm in. So if you choose to not go to school, aka college, before joining, what you can do is join enlisted and then go to college for free on the Navy's dime. And the Navy will pay for the whole thing. I'm currently still working on my bachelor's, and I've paid $0 for it. Whereas a lot of people go to college, they take out student loans, and it can be a struggle to pay back those student loans because by the time you actually get working, you're paying back tens of thousands of dollars to pay off that loan. Whereas I joined the Navy, I'm already working, I already have a job, whereas a lot of kids my age at the time when I first joined were just then going to school, they didn't have a job. Maybe they had a small job on the side, but I already had a job making good money. I had a car, and I was going to school at the same time as working. That can be a little bit of a daunting task, but I promise you it can be done. So many of us in the military do it, not just in the Navy, but also in the Marines and Air Force and Army. So keep that in mind. There's a whole world out there. I've been to so many different places. I've been to, let's count. I've been to, like I said, Cuba. I've been all over the United States. I've been to Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Cyprus, Dubai, the Seychelles. Seychelles, you guys probably never even heard of it. Seychelles is a small island chain under the equator in the Indian Ocean. So it's technically an African nation. It's extremely small, little group of islands. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. I had a wonderful time. I've been to Croatia. There's probably more that I'm forgetting. I've gone through the Suez Canal, which is like cuts right through the eastern part of Egypt. I've been to Israel. And then since I was stationed in Italy, I went all over Italy. I went to Rome, Florence, and did a bunch of other traveling while I was there. So it's been a good, almost 18 years. And I plan on doing at least 12 more, getting out and retiring.
Thank you so much today, Joel, for joining us, and thank you so much for your service.
All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Until the Navy was established, it was the Coast Guard that was the defender of our seas. The Coast Guard was created in 1790.
Today, the Coast Guard operates as a part of the Department of Homeland Security. Their mission is to protect our waterways, in the heartland, in the ports, and at sea. Our next video comes from a member of the Coast Guard.
Hi, I'm Zach Kadia, and today I would like to introduce you to Admiral Ralph Utley, a retired 2-star admiral in the United States Coast Guard, who served for 34 years and is a local of the Mobile area. So I have a couple questions for you. Why did you go into the military? Were you drafted or enlisted?
Why did I go into the military? I was brought up in a different time. My father had gone through World War II. I was brought up in a very wholesome environment. I was a Boy Scout, and it just seemed to me that giving back to the country would be the right thing to do. And I didn't enlist, or I wasn't drafted. I went to the Coast Guard Academy, which of course gives you a college education as well.
So what do you remember about the day you arrived at the Coast Guard Academy?
The first day that I reported to the Coast Guard Academy, my mother, father, and brother dropped me off at the door to Chase Hall, the cadet barracks at the Coast Guard Academy. I was greeted by a very nice person, a second-class cadet, who also was explaining to my parents what things were going to be like, and I was escorted in. As soon as I was escorted in the door, second-class cadets, or juniors, those in charge of our training, started screaming at us to brace up and to keep our eyes in the boat, means look straight ahead. And we were marched down to get haircuts, and we all ended up looking the same.
What were some of the reasons that you joined the military?
Why did I join the military? But I'm going to tell you why I joined the Coast Guard in particular. When I was coming up as a young man, there were two TV programs that I used to watch. One was West Point Story, and the other was Men of Annapolis. And I knew that I wanted to go to an academy. But I had a little cognitive dissonance in that I didn't really want to kill anybody. And so after doing a lot of research, I figured that the Coast Guard had a number of humanitarian missions, and that would not be the major purpose of my career.
What was SWAB summer like?
You see, when you first come to the Coast Guard Academy, a fourth-class cadet or freshman is called a SWAB. And you arrive 2 months before the academic year starts, and you get your haircut, as I alluded to before. You get your uniforms. They teach you some basic things about sailing and mathematics so that you can be on a par with all of your other classmates. And it's a very grueling process. Like I mentioned before, swab summer was like the first day for the entire summer. You had to make square corners and run through the corridors. You had to fetch things for the upperclassmen. You had to carry things for them. And basically you were sort of indoctrinated physically for the process. And that lasted, like I said, for the whole summer.
Have you ever been deployed?
Well, have I ever been deployed? One of my second aviation tours, first of all, let me explain to you that I went to a ship after I graduated. After I was on the ship, I went to flight school. After I went to flight school, I went to a Coast Guard Air Station, and subsequently I was transferred to the Polar Operations Division here in Mobile, Alabama. Now that unit is no longer in operation for a number of different reasons. But we flew off the icebreakers of the United States Coast Guard, and to this day, the Coast Guard is the service that operates icebreakers. And we used to fly from them. I was deployed off the coast of Greenland, off the coast of Alaska, and I went down to Antarctica, and that deployment lasted 6 months. The other two lasted 4 months and 3 months apiece. But we got a chance to visit some interesting places, Valparaiso, Chile, and Lima, Peru, and places like that. And we got to do some very interesting things. The scientists that came along on icebreakers would devise experiments that would be able to use the helicopters to make things happen faster because you get from one point to the other. And you had an opportunity to associate with the scientists and learn some things about their projects.
Where were some of these places that you were stationed?
Well, I won't go through all the places that I was stationed because there were 19 of them, but I was stationed in Mobile once, as I mentioned before, Miami, Honolulu, Detroit, Boston. It was all around the country. I was never stationed overseas. However, with the deployment, we went overseas quite a bit. And after I stopped flying, I went down to South America in counter-narcotics roles. The Coast Guard plays a big role in that. And I got to see an awful lot of the world that way.
What was your job in the military?
Well, my job in the Coast Guard is interesting. My primary function, I started out as a ship driver, and then I went to flight school. I became a helicopter pilot. But you don't just stay with your specialty. You bounce back and forth. I had some tours in personnel. I was the commanding officer of 2 Coast Guard air stations, one in Brooklyn, New York, and the other one in Miami, Florida. And after I became an admiral, I was the district commander in Honolulu, Hawaii.
What was your fondest memory while in the service, or favorite assignment?
Well, let's see. What would be my favorite job while I was in the Coast Guard? I think perhaps there were 2. I would like to say 2. I enjoyed Miami, being the CEO of the air station there. It was right there when Hurricane Andrew hit, and we had to do some unique things to pull that place back together and work with a bunch of civilian organizations and the other military service so as to, get the people out of the disaster area, which you're familiar with by living down here. And the other one was Honolulu, Hawaii, where I was the district commander. Now, one would think that would be a country club tour, but it happened over 9/11. And even though we were 3,000 miles away from the United States, the last place that was attacked before 9/11 on American soil was Pearl Harbor. So you can imagine that we were quite busy ramping up and increasing security. And the Coast Guard, of course, is in charge of security for waterways and coastal security.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
What advice would I give a young lady or a young man that was thinking about joining the military? Get as much information as you can and have a plan. What do you want to get out of the service? Do you want to make it a career? Or do you want to learn something in particular? Oceanography, electronics, computer science, things like that. a lot of the services will actually guarantee that they will send you to school for these things. So even if you only want to stay in for a first enlistment for years, and you have choices, and the different services offer you different things. Do your homework and have fun. I know when I talked about SWAB Summer, that didn't sound like fun, and it wasn't. I'm not going to say that it was. But I will say that I enjoyed every minute in the Coast Guard.
Thank you, Admiral Utley, for your sacrifice and service to this country. We greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.
The Air Force is the youngest branch of our armed forces. They protect our nation with various types of aircraft, including bombers, fighter jets, and helicopters. Other missions of the Air Force include taking pictures of other countries' military activity and tracking hurricanes to help with weather forecasting.
Women are major contributors in the armed forces, and we are pleased to talk with an Air Force veteran, Gina Walker, about her time serving our country. She's interviewed by Casey Hernandez-Sexton.
Hi, I'm Casey Hernandez-Sexton, and today I'm interviewing Gina Walker. She's a retired veteran from the United States Air Force and sister-in-law to Miss Adelino. Hi, Gina. How are you doing today?
Hi, Casey. I'm doing well, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Why did you go into the military? Were you drafted or enlisted?
I enlisted in the Air Force in 1993.
What do you remember about the day you enlisted?
I was living in Italy because my husband was in the Army and stationed in Italy when I applied to go into the Air Force. I had to fly to Germany to take the oath of enlistment because that was where the Air Force recruiter was for all of Europe. From Germany, I had to fly to San Antonio for basic training. What I remember the most was how nervous I was because while I talked to people that had been through basic training, I still didn't really know what to expect and how hard it would be mentally or physically. And also when I got to San Antonio, I was jet lagged, which didn't help starting out basic training with different time difference and being jet lagged.
What were some of the reasons that you joined the military?
I went into the Air Force primarily for the GI Bill, which gives you tuition money for college, but I also wanted to learn a new job or a skill. So that was my second reason.
How did you choose your branch of service?
I chose the Air Force because, like I said, I was married to an Army man, and after being on an Army base, I realized that the Army wasn't for me because physically I thought the Air Force would be a better fit. The Army tends to be a lot more physical, and so I also thought that I would have better job opportunities with the Air Force, so that's why I picked the Air Force.
What was basic training like?
Basic training wasn't really physically demanding because I had been prepared from some of the Army people I knew. They had taken me running and push-ups and sit-ups, so I was in pretty good physical condition when I went. But it was mentally challenging. Having to share a dormitory with 50 other women was not easy. Different personalities, learning to come together as a team, sharing a bathroom and a shower with 50 women was quite challenging. One of the other aspects was getting up really early in the morning when Reveille would be called, and Reveille is the trumpets. Then you have to jump out of bed, get dressed, and get outside and get into formation, and then you march around and start your day. And that part was a little challenging in the beginning. And you would go all day long, training and doing different activities. And I mean, from like 6 in the morning till 9 at night, you were nonstop doing training and such.
Have you ever been deployed?
So I was deployed to Iraq twice. I did 2 tours, 6 months each. And I had many assignments. I had 4 overseas assignments to Japan, Germany, Italy, and Portugal.
Where were some of the places that you were stationed?
I had some stateside assignments as well. I was stationed in New Jersey, New Mexico, and then I finished off my career in Maryland, which is where I retired.
What was your job in the military?
My first job in the Air Force was as an inventory management specialist, and then after 4 years, I retrained into contracting, and that's where I ended my career as a contracting person.
What was your fondest memory while in the service or favorite assignment?
I had so many great overseas assignments which gave me opportunities to experience and travel the world. But if I had to pick one, I think my fondest memory is going to Namibia, which is a country on the African continent. And I was sent there by with the Humanitarian Assistance Program. The Department of Defense has this program called the Humanitarian Assistance Program, and it's where you go and you do humanitarian things, and you build schools and you build clinics, and that's what I was doing in Namibia. I was helping build a school and a medical clinic for the tribal people, and they were very, very remote. We drove 5 hours on a dirt road to get to this village where the people lived, where we were building this clinic, and without that clinic being built, those people had no medical facilities within walking days because they didn't have cars to get any kind of medical treatment that we rely on every day and don't even realize. So I felt really good about that. And I liked doing that mission because DoD's mission is typically war or defense of the country, and this was doing something helping people, which I really did find rewarding.
How long did you serve, and what was your rank upon being discharged?
I served in the Air Force for 20 years and 3 months, and I retired at the rank of a Senior Master Sergeant, which is also called an E8.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
So if I had to give any advice to anybody, I would say to pick a job that you think can benefit you in your future as a civilian, so you can translate that into civilian world. So when you get out of the military, you have some skill and you can easily get a job. That's my job. I do the same job as a civilian now as I did in the military. I literally hung up my uniform, and now I come to work as a civilian doing basically the same thing. I think you should also just take advantage of all the military has to offer, whether it's the travel experiences, the meeting new people, the leadership skills that you gain, the GI Bill. There's so many good things to gain from it, but it's not for everybody. So I do tell people that the military isn't for everybody, and so you have to really be careful when you decide, that's the career path you want to take.
Thank you, Ms. Walker, for your service and sacrifice to this country. We greatly appreciate it.
It was nice talking to you, Casey.
Please be seated. The Armed Forces of the United States are made up of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard.
St. Luke's is proud to honor all veterans, and especially those that have touched our families and our school in different ways. Let's find out some more about a few of these veterans that represent the different branches of the armed forces.
First up is a Marine. This is appropriate as the Marines have been the first to fight in almost every major war. These soldiers of the sea, as they are also called, are specially trained for service on the sea, land, and air.
The motto of the Marine Corps is Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. We are so lucky to hear from our former upper school director, Tim Anderson, on his experience in the Marines. He is interviewed by Jack Wheeler.
I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Tim Anderson, former upper school director at St. Luke's School. He is also the husband of Mrs. Angela Anderson, one of our current faculty members. Mr. Anderson, thank you for being a part of our Veterans Day program. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you. Why did you go into the military?
Jack, I went in the military because when I got out of college, my friends from high school who had joined out of high school, joined the Army or the Marine Corps, were getting back. And I felt like I had skated through college while these guys were in a combat zone, and I just felt like I had an obligation to my country.
So you enlisted, sir?
I did.
What do you remember most about the day that you enlisted?
That it was bitter cold, that I was completely unprepared for what happened, in that I had to get a medical waiver because of an injury. And the recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we got your waiver, come on down." And I thought I was going down there to talk about possibilities. And they ushered me through the door and they said, "Just step right through that door." I went in there and there was a cold-eyed captain sitting there and he said, "Put your heels together, boy." And he administered the oath and I was in. And it wasn't a lot of heavy thought, it was just following orders.
All right, so since you enlisted, what was the main reason that you joined?
Just felt like I had an obligation to my country.
How did you choose your branch of service?
Well, I was dating a girl at Mississippi College, and I went out there and I walked through the student union, and Captain Reed Bolick, who was a recruiter for the Marine Corps, had a table set up. And I said, "Man, that uniform looks good." Of course, he had about 3 rows of ribbons. And I got to talking to him, and he thought I was a viable candidate, and so he started the process, and that's how it happened.
What was basic training like?
Well, it was 13 weeks of some very difficult times. There were a lot of times where you really questioned why you were there. Jack, if I could just add one thing. We had a formation at 4:15 in the morning. And so we had the formation, and then we would march to our morning meal. But the railroad had a track that went right through. And we were in Virginia, and you would see guys in a Pullman car having a nice breakfast as we were standing in the rain or standing in the cold and facing another day of training. Really make you wonder, why am I here exactly?
Have you ever been deployed?
Several times.
Where were some of the places that you were stationed, sir?
Well, I was stationed on both coasts. Also went to Europe. Jack, I think it was 5 times.
What was your job in the military?
Well, initially I was trained as an infantry officer, as all Marine Corps officers are. And after about a year of that, I thought, there's got to be a better way to make a living. And so I asked for it and got a lateral change and became a military policeman, MP as they call it in the military.
What was your fondest memory while in the service, or what was your favorite assignment?
Well, my fondest memory, without question, are the relationships. Richard Carr, Hugh Ingram, Billy McHarden, Tom Wheatley. There just aren't any better people than that, and that's what I really carried from the service. Probably my favorite assignment was the last one I had, which is I was an instructor in Commanding General Staff College, which is a school for majors who want to become lieutenant colonels. And they dubbed me as the military history resource. So I got to delve into things that I really love, and then I got to teach them to really eager students. That was a great assignment. That was almost not like work.
So how long did you serve, and what was your rank upon being discharged?
I have 26 years of active and reserve service, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
Find out what it is that you want to do, and then find a military occupational specialty in whatever branch you decide to go that matches that. Don't get a job that's just, we had what we call pickweed jobs. Don't do that, but find out what it is you want to do and go after that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your sacrifices and your service to this country. We greatly appreciate everything that you've done for us.
The Navy fights the enemy at sea, on it, under it, and above it. Their ships also carry food and medical supplies to disaster areas. Many Navy sailors chose this branch because they love the ocean and adventure. They have opportunities to visit many parts of the world. Let's check in on the St. Luke's alum to hear about his adventures in the Navy.
Until the Navy was established, it was the Coast Guard that was the defender of our seas. The Coast Guard was created in 1790.
Today, the Coast Guard operates as a part of the Department of Homeland Security. Their mission is to protect our waterways. in the heartland, in the ports, and at sea. Our next video comes from a member of the Coast Guard.
The Air Force is the youngest branch of our armed forces. They protect our nation with various types of aircraft, including bombers, fighter jets, and helicopters. Other missions of the Air Force include taking pictures of other countries' military activity and tracking hurricanes to help with weather forecasting.
Women are major contributors in the armed forces, and we are pleased to talk with an Air Force veteran, Gina Walker, about her time serving our country. She's interviewed by Casey Hernandez-Sexton.
And now to the oldest branch of the military, the Army. They defend our country with ground troops, tanks, helicopters, personnel carriers, and missiles. In addition to wartime duties, the Army also helps in disasters such as floods, forest fires, and storms.
We have not one, but two Army veterans to share their experiences. They are also a father and son duo, Don and Lee Banks.
Today, I would like to introduce you to Colonel Don Banks, retired, and Captain Lee Banks. Colonel Banks is the grandfather of Maddie and Brantley Banks and the husband of Susie Banks. Captain Lee Banks is the father of Maddie and Brantley and the son of Susie and Colonel Don Banks. Again, we appreciate you being a part of our program today, and at this time, I will ask you a few questions. Why did you go into the military, Colonel Don?
Well, when I went to college, I wasn't yet 19 to register for the draft. But we had mandatory ROTC at Alabama, so I had to join the ROTC. And when I got 19 and registered for the draft, I was already in advanced ROTC and had a contract with the Army to serve, to go in for 6 years. So I got into the Army because I went to college and we had to go to ROTC, and so I just got in it.
Were you drafted or enlisted?
Neither one. I was just, I got commissioned through the ROTC program.
Okay. Captain Lee Banks, why did you go into the military?
Well, I always had an interest in joining. Of course, my dad was in, and both my grandfathers, and then aunts or uncles and great-grandparents were in, and so I always was interested in the military from the time I was young. And so as I got older, I had an interest in flying helicopters, and so I tried to pursue that path in the Army, and it worked out to an extent, and then it changed, as I can explain later.
What do you both remember about the day you enlisted?
Well, the day I got commissioned and became an officer in the Army, there was a tradition at the University of Alabama that a sergeant would come up and salute you, and the first one to do that, we had to give them $2. So I got my first salute as an officer, and I had to give the sergeant $2.
The day I got commissioned as well, I remember I was going and thinking I was going to be selected as a pilot to fly Chinook helicopters because I was already in a National Guard unit working on those. And not only did they tell me that I was not going to be a pilot in the National Guard, but I was going to be a logistics officer on active duty. So I was quite taken back by that. But I remember that was a good experience. I do remember, I guess then when the first gentleman that saluted me, I gave him a silver dollar. So I don't know if it was just why we went down from $2 to $1, but we did. And I do remember my dad reading my oath.
How did you choose the branch of service?
Well, when I got in the National Guard, and when I got in the National Guard, I was assigned to a Signal Corps unit. So my branch was Signal Corps in the Army. You're probably asking about why did we get in the Army, and I was originally in Air Force ROTC, and before we got into advanced ROTC, they gave us all a ride on an old, we called them Goonie Birds, the C-47 airplane, and everyone got to fly the plane a little bit, and it was the worst ride I've ever seen. Almost got sick, so I landed and said, I'm not doing that, and I went and joined the Army.
I was probably too smart to join the Marine Corps. I'm just kidding, totally kidding. No, those guys are great.
you know, I guess I grew up around it, and that's really kind of all I knew. It's just, you know, probably when I was in middle school and on, I just kind of had that focus to serve in some capacity in the Army, because that's just what I had grown up knowing and was very interested in doing that. So it really was kind of not a whole lot of thought process that went into it. So.
What was basic training like?
Ours was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and there was a lot of marching and running and cleaning weapons, just learning how to do the basic soldiering skill, and it was hot. It was in June in North Carolina, and it was extremely hot.
I went to basic at Fort Lewis, Washington, which is in the Seattle, Tacoma area, and I remember a lot of things about it. I loved shooting weapons. I remember, you know, there's a lot of screaming and yelling. I do remember one time our platoon, we got in trouble and we had to take spoons from the mess hall and scrape off all the paint off of a wall. That was interesting. I liked, you know, the grenade ranges, the rifle ranges, but probably my favorite was the gas chamber. When they go in there and you go in your gear, they call it your mop gear. And I remember a guy next to me, he was really paranoid and was kind of freaking out, and he busted the seal in his gas mask. And so I was laughing so hard at him because he was just going crazy. It caused me to bust my seal, so I got an extra dose of the gas that day. So that's probably one of the things I remember.
Captain Banks, have you ever been deployed?
Yes, I was deployed twice in the Middle East. I was deployed in 2001 of 9/11 as in Egypt, and then came back home and then was redeployed to Kuwait and then Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Colonel Don, what was your job in the military?
I started out, I was a signal officer, then I was a transportation officer for a short time, and then I was a JAG officer, a lawyer in the Army for about 18 years.
Captain Banks, what about you?
When I started out, I worked on Chinooks in a guard unit in Birmingham, and then when I got commissioned, I was a logistics officer. That's what I did. So we transported fuel, ammunition, and supplies up and down supply lines.
What were your fondest memories while in service or your favorite assignment?
My favorite assignment was a command judge advocate position when we were deployed. I was an advisor to a group headquarters commander, and we got to do lots of stuff. There were many, you don't think about lawyers doing a lot of things, but there were a lot of questions that came up and issues that came up, from people getting killed and hurt to people trying to sneak weapons home, trying to figure out which targets could be legitimate targets. So we had a lot of things to do and stayed busy, and it was interesting.
You know, my fondest memories, of course, I have friends all over the world, but I guess you could say you said my fondest memory, was that what the question was?
Yes, sir.
I think it was when we captured the one-legged Iraqi soldier. So that was a pretty fond memory during Iraqi Freedom. They were trying to get into our area where we were operating, and of course we were able to capture the one-legged guy. It's the only one we got that day. I guess my favorite assignments, you know, I really enjoyed being when I was a platoon leader. I really enjoyed, you know, leading my soldiers as a young officer. So that was probably my favorite. I guess my favorite assignment overall was just leading soldiers in that capacity.
What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about joining the military?
Do it. Join the military. You get lots of benefits, meet lots of good friends, and you can get a lot of training that's really top quality training. Just get into something that you are interested in. Y'all might remember Matty Hurt's brother got in the Air Force, and he's deployed overseas working on F-16s now, something that he really likes. So it's the military can give you the opportunity to do something and learn something that will be enjoyable, and can also provide long-term benefits in the ways of jobs and things like that down the road.
I would say advice in joining, I would definitely do it. I would say if you're a person that you may or may not have the discipline to succeed, you know, to do well in your job, your next job in life. But the military really give you that foundation. Whether you have that or not, it gives you a great skill set to persevere and overcome adversities. It gives you, regardless of what your job is, you get a lot of leadership training to where you can lead others. So I definitely would say definitely join and really think about what it is, you know, you want to do when you're joining. Like, you know, there's people think, well, I just want to go blow stuff up. And it's not all about that. Now that is fun, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of great jobs in the military, you know, in like cyber intelligence or in technology that you can really get a strong foothold on that can correlate to the civilian world. So, but I would say join for sure.
Thank you, Colonel Banks and Captain Lee Banks, for your sacrifice and service to this country. We greatly appreciate it.
Now we will honor all of our veterans sent in by our St. Luke's families.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies. Foreign and domestic. And to bear true faith. And allegiance to the same. That I will obey. The orders of. The President of the United States. And the orders of. Those officers. Appointed over me. According to regulations. And the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
we celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The timing of this holiday is quite deliberate in terms of historical fact. But somehow it always seems quite fitting to me that this day comes deep in autumn when the colors are muted and the days seem to invite contemplation. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise, but most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. In memory of those who gave the last full measure of devotion, may our efforts to achieve lasting peace gain strength. Let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and borne by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.